Working Group 3 of the Action has completed a report with the title Overview of Curricular Demands of Disciplinary Literacies and Exploratory Survey.
The objective of Work Group 3 was to examine the curricular demands of disciplinary-specific discourse development as a function of students going through the education system, especially from elementary school to middle school and middle school to high school, where epistemologically speaking, the context becomes more and more complicated. And as a result, the language becomes more and more complicated already in our mother tongue. So imagine if students have to learn the new content in a foreign language. So that's the interest in this. So the title was Overview of Curricular Demands of Disciplinary Literacies, is specifically history, maths, and sciences. So from primary to element, meaning 11-year-old to 12-year-old, and around 12-year-old, 13, 14-year-old to 15, 16-year-old. Okay, that was the main objective. So that was the objective of this, this work group 3. How did we do this? The things we decided to do, that there were many researchers from many different countries. We decided to do it in 2 ways. We thought, okay, what do the national official curricular documents say about how to develop students' ability to use language in discipline-specific ways? Because disciplinary discourse is like a foreign language, even in our mother tongue. Imagine listening to a scientist speaking about, a chemist speaking about chemistry. It sounds like a foreign language to those of us who are not yet chemists, meaning students. So at this point, we decided to go about it in 2 ways. And there were 2 task groups developed. The 2 ways, one way was to look at official curricular documents. What do the national curricular documents say about how teachers or the education system should gradually help students become able to use discipline-specific discourse? Use the language of chemistry to speak about chemistry, the language of physics to speak about physics, history, etc. Because those are like foreign languages. So how specific are these official curricula about helping students do that? So what we did for that task was everybody looked at their national curricular documents, tons and tons of documents. And for example, Albania, where Merita's from, Italy, where I'm from, we took our national curricular documents for history, maths, and science, and translated them from L1 into English. The only country that did not need this was Finland. They already had theirs in English. We translated it into English. We double-checked with each other across countries, first within nations, then across countries, etc. So we have this huge repository of translated curricular documents translated into English. And there are 404,000 words of all these different countries. And then what we did was we developed a coding system to look at where in these official curricular documents do the curricular writers tell the teachers, not only do the students understand blah, blah, but the students can also do X, Y, and Z to show that they understand blah, blah. So what they do to produce knowledge is what we were interested in. How good is their ability to produce discipline-specific literacy? So what are the curricular demands of disciplinary literacies? That was that task. So the first task was to look at national curricular documents. And from that, we produced a tool for coding. And then we produced a huge repository of 404,000 words of all these national curricular documents. Then the second tool, and Merita will talk a little bit more about what they did with it. The second tool was a proxy of the curricular demands. Basically, the question asks, what do teachers expect their students to write about content? Okay, what are the teacher's expectations of curricular demands? So if a chemistry teacher has taught chemistry, how does she expect her students to use language to speak about chemistry? And to do that, we had a very interesting way of saying, okay, we asked the teachers to find some semiotic representations of knowledge and write what they expect their students to write about that image. So in that way, we were able to indirectly look at what teachers expect their students to say about their subjects. So that was the indirect way to answer the question, what are the curricular demands of disciplinary literacies? So from the teacher's point of view. So one was top-down, curriculum writers, what they expect, and one was very much in the field, bottom-up, what teachers expect. So we had these two tasks, and that produced 25,000 Word documents. So Merita will probably be able to clarify more of that, and then we'll, so that was what we did.
In fact, I worked on both tasks, but probably because of my background as a teacher, I really loved working with my teacher friends on task 2. And I'm going to give some details of how we did that and how other researchers could continue our work and use those tools that Working Group 3 has developed. So task 2 was teachers' expectations survey. What we wanted to investigate was what are the teachers' expectations regarding students' literacy, disciplinary literacy, which was part of deliverable 7. And as Teresa explained, we looked at teachers' expectations for how students express subject-specific knowledge, what we call productive disciplinary discourse. The idea was to understand what content teachers expect in terms of academic language. And as Teresa mentioned before, with the passing of the years, the language that the students are using in different subjects, it becomes more and more challenging, both in L1 and EL2. Language 1 and language 2, but this task was tricky because many subject specialists know their content but don't see teaching as teaching the language as their job. They can tell if a text is accurate, if a text is produced by the students orally or in written form is accurate, but they often think poor writing or poor language used in this text is just a language issue and not their responsibility. So asking content teachers to define disciplinary literacy in details doesn't always give reliable answers. So that is why we wanted to do this exploration in an indirect way. What we decided to do is focus on history, science, and math teachers, and we also experimented a little bit with language teachers, although this was not in the objective of the action. The process involved contacting our teacher friends. Sometimes it was over coffee or sometimes over a little glass of wine, and we explained them the tasks. We asked them to pick at least 5 semiotic items, which, as Teresa explained before, the semiotic items means pictures or graphs or charts or images or whatever material that the teachers used in order to facilitate teaching and learning. And these semiotic elements could have been taken by the textbooks or authentic materials that they use in the class. The next step involved making the teachers wear their good students' shoes and describe in written form what they would write looking at each semiotic item. And personally, I still remember the enthusiasm of some of the teachers that I contacted, and also their surprise at having to think and write as their good student, which is basically what they expect from their students. That made the task challenging for the content teacher, was that they had to think a lot about the language, not only about the content, which is what they basically teach in their everyday work. The final step was for us as researchers to collect and analyze the texts that the teachers had written based on the semiotic items that they had selected. We collected data from 50 teachers from ITC and non-ITC countries. What seems to be seems like an easy and somehow fun job, especially in terms of the protocols of the tools that we use to collect and analyze the data, is in fact the hard work of working group 3 members, and especially the hard work of our colleagues, Teresa Ting, Sylvia Rinder-Marschallinger, and Silvia Minardi in designing the tools for data collection and data analysis. So to collect the data for the data, working group 3 members used the teacher's expectations elicitation protocol, which was one of the tools for task 2, and it was developed by Teresa Ting and Sylvia Rinder-Marschallinger. And the second tool was used to analyze the data collected from the teachers using the CDF, Cognitive Discourse Functions-Based Coding and Analysis Guide, developed by Silvia Minardi and Sylvia Rinder-Marschallinger. So basically, apart from writing the report, working group 3 members focused only on doing the research, taking the research a little bit further through other research projects, mainly using and promoting the 3 tools that working group 3 has developed. And the writing of the report and delivering the deliverable 7 was done through joint effort of working group 3 members. And this, as I said, is only one part of the collaborative work. The 3 tools developed by our members continue to be used, and several research projects are being carried on based on this outstanding work. One of these works and projects was also was presented as part of the work that Working Group 3 has done in the World CLIL Conference in 2025, World CLIL Conference 2025 in Ireland. The project is titled Disciplinary Literacy in History Education and Comparative Study of Teachers' Expectations in Turkish and Albanian Secondary Education. And it is a collaboration of researchers from 3 countries, Albania, Turkey, and Austria, using exactly the tools that were developed as part of task 2. So what we found out is that I'm not going very much into the details, but we found out that teachers have different expectations in both countries, but even teachers within the same country have different expectations from their students in terms of disciplinary literacy. And that means that it's translated in a way as part of as an indication of teachers professional development, meaning that some of the teachers were more determined to seek for disciplinary literacy advancement in their students, others not that much. And that means that if you are not expecting too much from your students as a teacher, then probably the results will not be the ones that you that we as educators want to achieve from our students, meaning that we need to focus a lot on teachers' professional development.
Because I'm a content person to start, so we teach a lot of content, blah, 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 blah. But the point is, like we were saying, disciplinary discourse, the language of chemistry, the language of history, the language of economics, is already like a foreign language, even in our L1. And who can teach that language? Not the language teacher. It has to be the content teacher. And so that is why, yes, like Merita was saying, the teacher training part is really interesting. And so basically what's happening now is there are many, many different offshoots of work group 3 members collaborating with other groups, and developing other, furthering the use of these tools. And actually Merita and Barbara, who is from Poland, who is also part of Work Group 3, they have now another research project going on.
We got inspired by the amazing work of Working Group 3 and CLIL NetLE in general, and as COST association per se is a networking association trying to make us researchers find each other and work each other and enjoy each other's collaboration and company. We decided to, based on the foundations of CLIL NetLE and Working Group 3, we decided to bring our research to another level. As Teresa mentioned at the beginning of the interview, CLIL NetLE and Working Group 3 focused on secondary lower secondary and secondary education, while we wanted, together with my colleague Barbara Mustinka, if I'm saying the last name right, we wanted to see what is happening in the tertiary level. So we applied for a project from the Western Balkans Fund and the International Visegrad Fund. The project is titled Advancing B and Multilingual Disciplinaries in Higher Education Courses between Albania and Poland within the framework of Visegrad Group. And what we are aiming to do is to use and promote the tools that were developed by Working Group 3 to analyze the curricula of STEM and or humanities in the tertiary level. So basically, I'm happy to say that CLIL NetLE and Working Group 3 made us find ways to continue our collaboration in terms of disciplinary literacies, cognitive discourse functions, and the language that we use or expect from our students to use throughout their academic career also.
Well, the extension that Merita mentioned with the extra grant, with the additional grant that she and Barbara have found and been financed is one thing. And with another group of Work Group 3 members, the group from Lithuania and also Poland and Italy and Austria, we're now going a little step further to see how we can, how curricular documents might be slightly modified to prompt for productive disciplinary literacies. So the possibilities are endless. The last thing, for example, I'm part of work group 2, which is what Francisco and Lidia are in charge of. And I've recently, thanks to this cost action, I've been working with teachers in Portugal, in Spain, and in Turkey. And we're looking at an analysis of the curricula of teachers' writings from teachers who teach chemistry. So the question was, can teachers who teach chemistry, how do they write regarding chemistry? Because of course, if they're going to be teaching students how to write about chemistry, they themselves should be able to write pretty well. So yeah, the possibilities are endless, because in that article, we conclude with some explicit instruction of how to teach discipline-specific discourse. Because just speaking in the proper language, which teachers do, does not ensure that students learn. So I guess to answer your question, Maria, it's the possibilities are endless. It can be directed to teacher education. Tool number 2 could be used for teacher education. Some of these use tool number 1 for teacher education, having students go through the curricular documents. Some theses have been written using these tools. And so basically, I would say go look at the report, and the tools are in there in the appendices. There are 3 tools and 2 repositories. And yeah, the huge repository of also national curricula translated into English by English experts. I mean, this is before ChatGPT, but nonetheless, I mean, these are English experts. So, so that is also a huge repository, along with the repository of teachers' texts, 225,000 words of teachers' texts. Yeah, so that is where we are with work group 3, and we're now in the process of carrying out, just concluding our work and trying to get it published and doing a few case studies on how things are progressing. I don't know if Merita, you have some information about case studies that you want to talk about?
Yes. Thank you, Teresa. And it's interesting. The case study ideas are very interesting also, and they are built on the work of Working Group 3 on both tasks. We now have around 13 case studies ideas coming from at least 26 members of Working Group 3. And again, I want to emphasize the collaboration between our members, how they try to find out ways to bring perspectives from different countries together and see and analyze and try to find ways how to improve and to contribute to this field. Some of the case studies, one of the case studies, for example, has to do with the evaluation of teachers' expectations and real students' productions on semiotic resources by using CDFs and linguistic analysis. Another one, it has to do with CDFs as a tool to assess disciplinary literacies and so on. And we're expecting our members to continue their work and present their results in conferences and published papers so that we can inform policymakers, teachers, or everyone who's interested in this field how to approach this topic.